So we've sewn the shoulder seams together and we've trimmed them off, and this is the inside of the t-shirt. What we're going to do is flip it around to the outside of the t-shirt. So the right side of the t-shirt is facing up, the right side of the fabric is facing us. And what we can see here is the armhole. Just looks like a big U. We're going to take each of the sleeve pieces and we're going to put the pin the sleeve piece into the armhole. Now you'll notice that this is a concave curve and the sleeve head is a convex curve, and so we have to try and fit that into this. It's a little bit fiddly. Now there are a few things that we can do, that we will do, to make it easier, to make sure that we sew it in accurately. And the first thing to do is to recognise that we have cut a small notch in the top of the sleeve head, and that indicates where to match the top of the sleeve head to the shoulder seam. So what we want to do also is, when we're going to pin the sleeve head onto the armhole, we need to make sure that we've got the right sides of the fabric facing each other. Okay, so we need to put some markings with pins. We need to mark 4 points along the armhole and 4 points along the sleeve head so that we can match the pieces accurately. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to take the sleeve head. We've got the notch at the top, we've got the armhole, or the very corner of the sleeve head, and what we're going to do is we're going to match those together, and we're just going to fold that in half, and we're going to find the halfway point between those 2 points. So halfway between the armhole edge and the sleeve head edge and the sleeve head. And the same on the other side. So take the corner and match that to the notch. Fold this around to find the halfway point and mark it with a pin. So you can see that we now have 4 clearly marked spots for matching. 1, 2, 3, 4, actually 5. Sorry about that, my maths is terrible. We need to do the same with the armhole so that we can match those points. So we've got where the notch will be matching the shoulder seam. We've got the corners of the armhole, and then we need to find the halfway point between those 2 points. So all we have to do is fold this in to the shoulder seam and mark with a pin and fold it out again. And the same with the other side. Mark it with a pin and fold it out again. Okay. Now the sleeve heads are always cut just slightly bigger than the armhole, which seems a bit crazy, but it's to give the top of the sleeve head a little bit more shape as it sits over your shoulder. So what we have to do, and luckily we have a knit fabric with a bit of stretch, is that we have to, as we sew or as we pin, we have to stretch the fabric slightly so the 2 edges match. So I'm going to pin the shoulder seam with the sleeve head notch first, and I just pin on either side of the notch. Then what we're going to do is we're going to take this corner, we're going to match it to this corner. Make sure the edges are sitting directly on top of each other. Then I'm going to take this pin and sit them on top of each other. Remove one and pin that edge together. Now, as I said, there'll be a little bit of bubbling. The sleeve head is slightly longer than the armhole, so all we have to do here is just bring that down and match the 2 edges together and put a pin in. I'm going to stretch that very slightly and keep my sleeve edges and my armhole edge matched, so they're sitting directly on top of each other. You don't want one overlapping or sitting higher than the other. And then we do the same down here. So we're going to stretch that armhole very gently, and we're going to whack a pin in there. Pin those together. Now the more pins you put in at this point in time with a sleeve head is actually better, because the fabric's going to want to move, because you're putting the convex curve and the concave curve together. One's going to want to slide away from the other. So I have my pins in place. Oops, I have my pins in place. I've pinned one side of the armhole to the sleeve, and now I'm going to do the same with the other side. So I'm going to match this corner to this corner. and pin. Then I'm going to match the pin to the pin and the edge to the edge, and I'm going to pin that together. Then I'm going to find the halfway point between here and here, matching the edges together, put the pin in. I'm going to put another one in between that. So I've got my pins about 2 to 3 centimeters apart. You can even put them closer together. Like I said, we want it to hold firmly. We need to match the sleeve head up with the armhole. We'll need to stretch it very slightly to make sure they fit and sit together. Pin this side, and just the top of the sleeve head's quite round, so I just need to pull that back so it sits on top of the other edge. And I'm going to put a couple of extra pins here because this is where the deepest part of the convex and concave curves have to match. Okay, so I have my sleeve pinned into my armhole now. I'm going to take it to the sewing machine and stitch it in place.